my name is Deborah and welcome to the Edit by DH. Welcome to another episode of the Dee Unedited series. This is episode 4, which is all about friendship. Now, quite unlike the other episodes that I've done, I normally for each episode have a part 1 and part 2. So it will be on the same topic, but it's part 1 and part 2. For this episode, I'm not sure if I'll have a part 2, just simply because of the kind of topic that it is. I don't know if it requires a part 2, and even if it does, I'm not sure really who I would invite on. I have a lot of friends that could potentially be on this episode, but they are very camera shy, which is such a shame because they're so engaging, they're so lovely, and I feel like they would have a lot to contribute. So right now, as it stands, episode 4 will be a standalone episode, but I will probably leave it open and revisit this in the near future. So I thought, just to start off this episode, how do you define friendship? And I wanted to start with that. So when I was looking at different, definitions of friendship, especially on dictionaries, it's sort of very wishy-washy, and obviously it's about relations or relationships that you have with certain people and the emotional bonding that you can have with them. But I really liked a definition that I found through BetterHelp. And it describes a friendship as, or a friend as, a friend is often someone that you share a bond with. You may share some common beliefs and values with friends, and often a friend is someone you trust and enjoy being around. Friends can be in person or online and can vary in distance. You might have a next door neighbour friend or a friend thousands of miles away. And I thought that was really accurate, especially for this day and age. So why am I doing this episode? With my mental health lately, and some of you who have been following me for a while would have known that about a month ago I had a very low dip with my mood and my mental health, and I call it my funk. I call it being in a funk, and normally I find it easy to get out of a funk, and I'm talking like one or 2 days of feeling really rubbish, and then I get out of it quite quickly. But this time around, for some reason, I just couldn't shift it. It was literally like a cloud, a grey cloud over my head, just following me around everywhere. I felt very, very low. I felt very, I don't want to use the word depressed, but I felt very low. And honestly, like anything would trigger my sadness. Just felt very sad constantly, very low in energy, very lethargic, very fatigued, and just wanting to cry at really the smallest of things, even for no reason. So that was a really tough time for me because, like I said, I normally can get out of it after like a day or two, but this time it lingered around for about a month. And obviously I have a lot of things going on in my life all the time, constantly. I'm not very good at just being, if you know what I mean. I am often juggling different things, different projects, working, etc. So yes, of course you get the stresses from those things. However, I think for me the cherry on the cake was just feeling let down by friends, and it really made me evaluate my friendships with them, and what kind of friend am I to them and what kind of friend are they to me. It was really a black hole for thoughts. So it then kind of inspired this episode. I'm also known as the friend who is quite calm, strong, has it together, and I don't normally mind being the listener or the supporter, and I often play that role. I listen to so many people, like my nickname is the Agony Aunt, but I don't mind that because I would rather listen to somebody else, my friend, and try and be supportive than them listening to me and trying to provide support. And I don't like to dominate conversations with my problems. I try not to dwell too much on my problems and sort of like move on and be, positive about it. So although I like listening to others, it's not until recently that I realized just how much it drains my energy and soul to an extent. Now you might think, oh, that's so obvious, you give so much when you listen to somebody, but like I said, to me it's sort of like second nature. But it's only recently that I realized just how much I was giving to other people, and that's fine, but just how much of an imbalance there was as well. This episode is going to be a really upfront episode with lots of side topics I'm sure will just stir something up in you as a listener. It will maybe make you think about your own relationships and friendships and hopefully start a conversation. By the way, I'm also going to preface this by saying that I don't think that I'm a perfect human being or a friend. Nobody is. Nobody is perfect. We're all flawed. This is supposed to be conversational, not personal, so don't take it as such. This is literally just going to be me being honest, talking about friendships, sharing some anecdotes, sharing some real experiences, sharing my thoughts. Hopefully some of it will make you think, hopefully some of it will make you laugh because it'll be a bit tongue-in-cheek. But either way, this is literally just to start a conversation. So I would love to hear from you and for you to comment down below if you're watching my YouTube video. I know you can't if you're listening to the podcast. But yeah, if you're watching this, then I would love for you to comment down below or even, privately message me. So like I said, this episode was triggered by just feeling a certain type of way about certain friends and how it left me feeling. And I often reflect on myself. I often do, because like I said, I don't think I'm a perfect human or a perfect friend. And I know I've fallen short at times. But I do reflect, and this has often led me to overcompensating in a way. So I do want to say that though this episode is purely going to be about recent events, obviously I'm not going to name names or specific situations, it's sort of summarizing, but I am going to focus more on the toxicity of friendships and how it can leave you feeling. But I do want to say that, of course, I have many wonderful friends, some of whom are lifelong friends. And most of my friendships, I would say, in my close circle, I've had friends since like primary school. I've got friends since high school, college, university, work, places that I've been at. I've got friends from so many different places and times of my life. So in case you see me looking down, I've made some notes because sometimes I feel like maybe I'm waffling on and I do want to stick to the points that I'm trying to make because there is a specific set of things that I want to go through. So if you see me looking down, it's just me looking at my own notes. I wanted to do an episode on friendship, the standards we choose to accept, and the impact toxic friendships had on me and can have on you. That's why I titled this episode Enough is Enough. An article by Mind Body Green, I think it's called, which I will link down below, stated that as humans, we all need connection. We're a social species and we thrive the more we're able to relate to and rely on each other. Research shows the mental and physical health benefits of friendship are plentiful, from lowering the risk of depression and helping us feel more satisfied with our lives, to improving longevity, cognitive functioning in our elder years, and a host of other physical health outcomes. Actually, you can see that there are so many ties to having a good friendship, to our mental health, and then again linking that to our physical health as well. When you think about it, it actually makes sense that it all connects. But in the same way, you can then imagine the complete opposite when you have a friendship that's not quite living up to what it should be, making you feel not as you should be, and therefore it can lead to a whole host of negative mental health effects, which is basically, I feel like, what happened to me a month ago. So I want to start with the pandemic. I think the pandemic really changed my thought processes on so many things, but especially on relationships. Not only my relationship with my other half, my relationship with my mum, family in general, but my very close friends as well. During the pandemic, and I'm sure this was the case with everyone, it really made us stop, pause, think about our lives and what's going on and the people we have in our lives. I think many of us can relate when some of us struggled and therefore we were able to find out sort of like who our true friends were, who we could really lean on and who were really there for us when we needed that emotional and mental support, because all of us physically were separated, weren't we? We weren't allowed to see each other. We were socially distanced, either because there was an actual physical distance or because we simply weren't even allowed to have contact with one another. It was during that time that my estranged father came back into my life after 20 years. And that made me, that triggered a whole Pandora's box. And, you know, if you've seen my episode, I believe it's episode 2, on the kind of upbringing that I had and my relationship with my father, then I had a friend who I'd previously fallen out with who came back into my life, and it was easier to forgive her because I remembered all the good times that we had. And then there were friends that left my life because I didn't want to put up with crap, because I think the pandemic really taught me one thing, which is just how precious not only life is, but how our time is, just how precious time is. I think no one, well, apart from a few people, they couldn't have predicted how devastating it would have been on our individual lives. Overall, it just made me feel way more grateful for having life in general, because so many people died unfairly during that time. But I also think it made me feel like, because life is short, really the relationships you have in your life should be only ones that are important and make you feel good. They shouldn't be friendships or relationships that leave you feeling drained or sad or toxic or abandoned or lonely, anything like that. So I remember the pandemic was really a trigger for these feelings. But at that point, I still hadn't put my sort of thoughts together like I have now for this episode. And I remember a friend complaining about her best friend, about how she felt like this best friend wasn't really there for her, and she was really trying to always outreach to her and spend time with her, and, you know, just wanting her to be there as a friend. And this friend was sort of like pulling away from her. And I remember giving this friend of mine advice that she can choose the standards she wishes to accept. And by that, I mean, I said, you set your own standards in every relationship. And I still stand by that advice. So what I mean by that, if it's not already obvious, is that you can have any friendship you want. You can have any sort of relationship you want. But you choose your self-worth. You choose your own value. And you choose what you accept as a standard for yourself. If you're okay with that flaky friend, if you're okay with a friend not being there for you, not necessarily 100% of the time, but the majority of the time, and there's that imbalance, and you're okay with being a doormat, or you're okay with this and that, and being treated that way, not just in a friendship, but even in a relationship, you're okay with not having love reciprocated in the same way that you give it, that's the standard you choose to accept. And as long as you're okay with it, then that's okay. As long as you're safe, that's okay. But if you're not happy with that, then why do you accept that standard? If it makes you feel like rubbish at the end of the day, why do you accept that standard? You set the bar, and that's in your control, right? So that's the advice that I gave to my friend. But it's only recently that I realized that I wasn't taking on my own advice. I was lowering my standards. I was accepting way more rubbish and just less than should be friendship than I should do. Lots of people like agreeable Debs, but when I'm finally putting my foot down and have something to say, it obviously doesn't always go down well. It made me think about the kind of friend that I am. And maybe I don't deserve good qualities or manners to be reciprocated back to me. You know, by the way, it's not that I think I'm a great friend. It's like, the point is I try to be a great friend. And it made me question the kind of friend that I am. And I thought, maybe I think I'm trying to be a good friend, but maybe I'm a god-awful friend. And I remember for my closest of friends and asking them, what kind of friend am I to you? Be honest. And my friends know that I can take honesty. They all kind of came back with similar things, and it just reiterated, okay, that's the person and the friend I try to be, and that's the impression they're clearly getting. So it reassured me that that's a friend that I think I am because of what they said back to me. But did it make me feel better? Not really, because then it made me feel like, well, if I'm trying my best and I'm giving you literally my all, then why am I not getting it back from certain people? Do I not deserve that? I think sometimes even if we have really good friends, we don't always tell them the good qualities about them. You have a great time, you have a good chit chat. You might say, oh, this is why I love you. But you may not necessarily point out their good qualities. And I think it's so important to do that in any relationship, but also a friendship. Because otherwise, sometimes a person doesn't know, and they sometimes need that little bit of a reassurance or encouragement. It's healthy to tell a friend, why you love them and what is their great traits about them and the positive traits, just as much as you would communicate if they've let you down. I believe this balance is healthy in a relationship. So what kind of friend am I? I'm an agony aunt. I like to listen to my friends, and I believe that I give damn good advice just because I feel like I am quite worldly. So it comes from a worldly perspective. I also think I give good advice because I care about the person, and that is a huge factor when giving advice to somebody else. I also am a good listener in general. And more importantly, I'm honest. So I'm going to give you an honest opinion. I won't be blunt or rude, but I will give you an honest opinion. If you want me to be honest with you, I'll be honest. And I believe that in any relationship, especially a friendship, you should be honest with one another and be able to be honest with one another. Especially if you know the other person cares about you and it's not coming from a place of attack or it's because they don't like you. It's quite the opposite. I feel that I'm a dependable friend. I might not always be in my friend's life regularly, messaging every single day, but I know I'm that friend, or at least I try to be. When you need me in an emergency and you really need me, I will be there. Like, there's no question about that. Many a times I've had friends who've been in really dark places and I've dropped everything. Whether I had an important work meeting or something, I've dropped everything to be there for that person and that friend. I'm the friend, like I said, who will give it to you straight, whether it's about our friendship, whether it's about your relationship. And on that note, there are always friends who are scared to talk about or give advice about the other person's relationship, or scared to disagree with the other friend because, for example, I have many girlfriends who complain about their other half, often quite rightly. And you might, as a friend, be like, okay, well, I don't want to offend this person, I don't want to offend their partner, or opposite, I don't want to disagree, even though you clearly see that your friend's in the wrong. You don't want to say in case you upset them and you're walking on eggshells. But then in my opinion, that's not a real friendship, because you shouldn't have to walk on eggshells. And really, me telling you that you're in the wrong when it comes to an argument with your partner, for example, other half, is me being a better friend than me saying, no, you're right, no, darling, you're always right. The reason why is because by telling you straight and being honest with you, that's healthier for your relationship than me always telling you you're right and you're deluded. That's not going to help your relationship in the long run. Trust me on that. And I'm also that friend who often gets asked about fashion. And again, if you go clothes shopping with me, and all my friends who've been clothes shopping with me or any shopping with me will know that I'm very straight to the point. So if they pick up something and say, what do you think? There's so many times I've been like, hell no, drop that piece of rag right now. So yeah, you can definitely rely on me for an honest opinion. I also like to think that I'm generous, as giving is my love language, as I said before. If you give me something or do something for me, I remember it, and I will make sure that I give it back to you twicefold, threefold. I'm the type of person that if you've let me down, I will let you know. I will make you aware instead of just sulking. I will at least tell you once, if not twice. This is something that has let me down. This is something that you did that made me feel like this. And the reason why I communicate that is because that's my way of caring, like I said, rather than just walking away. It's because I care that I communicate it. Otherwise, I wouldn't care. I'll just be like, well, I'll just let this friendship fizzle out because I can't be asked, and walk away. That to me is not a real friendship, and that to me is not caring. Every relationship needs to be worked on and isn't perfect. And that's what makes you stronger. That's what makes your relationship stronger. But it's also how people, like your friends, react in situations that tells you their real character. A good friend will acknowledge when they've done wrong or when they've let you down, and will try to make the necessary changes in actions, not just words, because words are cheap. I also think I give a lot of myself to people because it takes me a lot to socialize. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. I know some of my closer friends will be. I am very socially anxious, and I'm definitely an introvert. I might not come across like that. And you know what? It's interesting because some people, they will say, you know, if you ask what's Deb's like, they will say, oh, she's very quiet. She's quite shy, isn't she? Not really sure what she's like. And then there's other people who will say, oh, Debs is the leader. She's like the life and soul of the party. And I think it just really depends on which, you know, situation or setting I'm in, and also the groups of people that I'm with. If I'm really like talkative, goofy, fun, it's because I feel comfortable with you. If I'm quiet and I withdraw, that means I'm completely not comfortable in that situation or with the people that are there in that setting. So what I'm trying to say is that I think it takes it out of me to socialize more, and people just think, you know, they don't think twice about meeting up. People who don't have social anxiety or who aren't introverts don't understand the energy it takes to even leave the house, to even get on public transport, to even go into a central town area with all those people where it's very overwhelming. To them, it's just like something you do. To people like myself, it's a huge step that we take every single time to socialize. So sometimes I don't think some of my friends even realize how much effort it takes for me to even meet up with them. And again, I'm doing that because I care, because I want to spend time with them. So I will overcome my social anxiety or push through it or get out of my comfort zone just to meet with them. And often I'm meeting my friends in central London because London is such a big city. And so all of my friends, we live in different parts of London. So often central London is like the easiest place to meet up, really, because it's halfway for all of us. Then imagine, with that existing energy that I've got, I'm listening to their problems. And I don't mind this because, like I said, I feel like it is kind of my nature to listen. I feel like that's what also friends are for. Where I have an issue is when it's not reciprocated the one time that I need them. I don't believe that you always have to be like give and take, give and take, give and take. But if you know the majority of the time that I've been there for you, and the one time I need support and you're not there, I start to take that personally, which is exactly what happened a month ago. However, within my reflection, I've also had to take responsibility. It's the first time I've thought like this, but I feel like I have spoiled some of my friends by constantly being that friend that says yes, by constantly being that friend who picks up the phone to be there for that person and not say no, or just be there for them, to be that friend that listens to them and not the other way around 90% of the time, and not say, hey, how about you ask me for once, how am I doing? And I don't mean in a casual, like, tick box exercise kind of way. Like, genuinely ask me how I'm doing and genuinely care about the answer, and then care to listen afterwards, care to follow up afterwards. And it's my fault that I've created a habit in them and allowed them to withhold a standard that, frankly, is not acceptable in a friendship. Frankly, I don't want to accept in a friendship. So in that regard, I have to take some responsibility and accountability. Sadly, in this year of reflection, this year has been a really interesting year. We haven't even been through the full year yet. Obviously, we're in month 9, which is obviously September. And we're almost there. Like, we've passed the halfway mark. Before you know it, it'll be bloody Christmas. However, this year has been really interesting. And for me, if I could give a title for every year of my life, this year I would title it the transitional year. So many things have happened. So many key things have happened in my life this year that in itself, if I say it out loud, just sounds absolutely bonkers in both a good and a bad way. But it's also the year that's transitional, not only because of the changes with work or projects that I've been involved in, or people that have come in or out of my life, or because of the move that I'm about to do next year and the planning that's going towards that. It's a transitional year because it's the year and the first time where I feel like I could title it 2 ways: either the transitional year or the year that I've allowed people to really use me. Again, partly my fault and partly theirs. I was recently called sensitive because these are the expectation and standards that I want to uphold. I want to continue talking about different things, and I'm going to go on to like another side topic in just a second to do with friendship. But I would love to know your thoughts at this point. So far, based on what I've told you, is it unfair for me to uphold these standards? Is it unfair for me to desire these things in a friendship? And by the way, I'm not asking for 50-50 in a friendship. It would be nice, but even 60-40 would be great. Right now, with some of my friendships, I feel like it's very much an 80-20. Is it unfair for me to want a 60-40? So I'd love to know your thoughts so far based on what I've just spoken about down below. Now, going back to the article I mentioned earlier, which is a Mind Body Green article. Like I said, I'll link the article down below. It talks about the different types of friendships that you can have and the different types of toxic friendships. And like I said, this episode is about the types of toxic friendships. Yes, it might sound negative, but I would think that you guys would agree if you've been following me for long enough on Instagram or YouTube. I always try to be positive, even with honesty and my honest posts, especially about my past. I would hope you can realize that there is always a positive message at the end of it. Not because, I feel that's necessary, just because that's my mindset. So often on my post, it's always a shout out to people that I love. I've done that in the past, not only just friendships, but my mum, and even with her hardship, I really respect her and respect my friends. So generally, I am positive. But for today's episode, like I said, I want to talk more about the toxic sides of relationships, specifically to do with friendships. So instead of being super serious, I decided to talk about the different types of toxic friends that you can have, and I've decided to give them nicknames. These are nicknames that I've made up. They're not scientific, and you'll obviously realize that. And it's just a little bit of tongue-in-cheek as well, just to lighten the mood a little bit. So I'm sure there's going to be many, many more, but these are just the ones that I've come up with. So some of the toxic friends that we can have are called hyenas. And I've named them hyenas because they are the kind of friends who are happy to take anything from you. Take, including leftovers. I have had quite a few hyenas in my life. I had a friend who used to borrow money from me for years. And honestly, to the point where I became the bank of Debs. Honestly, I got like criticism for it. People were always like, why are you even friends with this girl? Why do you even like keep giving her money? And they would criticize and question my decisions to give her money and lend her money. But for me, I think what they didn't understand is I obviously grew up with a single mum, and I know how much my mum struggled financially as a single mum. And I know that there were times in her life, people helped her financially. Obviously, my mum's the type of person who's now extremely good with money. And back then, it wasn't because she was bad with money. She was just a struggling single parent in a foreign country. But I remember how much it helped my mum and encouraged her when people just loaned her a bit of money to be able to get something important, and it was a step up for her. And then she could, when she was in a financially secure place, she could then give that money back. So that's what I used to think about when I used to lend this particular friend money, and she used me as a bank of Debs. And that was fine. But then it came a point where after years of doing this, I started to feel like not only was it becoming a habit, and she wasn't being sensible with the money, by the way. It's not like she was saving money desperately for a mortgage or saving money desperately for rent. It was because she was being frivolous with it elsewhere that she wasn't able to save the money, which is not what my mum was doing, by the way. And so in the end, the thing that really got to me was the fact that she started to expect me to say yes. And our friendship just became solely around me lending her money, and that's when I had to put my foot down. And after many years, our friendship ended. Not just because of that, but because she then found a partner who she could potentially just lean on instead of me. So yeah, that's really sad, but she's an example of someone I would put in that hyena category. Even with gifts, I am normally very generous, and I'm more generous. So like even the standard of gift or the quality of gift, I'm pretty generous, even if people aren't generous back. this has nothing to do with this person's salary. Some of my friends with the least have been the most generous, if that makes sense. And even if they didn't gift me with a physical gift back, they would gift me with gestures or like a meal, or just be there when I needed them. And that was their gift back to me, if you know what I mean. I'm talking more about people where you know they earn a lot and they're very generous within themselves, but they don't reciprocate. And it's all, if they do reciprocate, like you could be getting them really nice gifts and they're giving you like lesser value, or like just gifts that is a bit like meh, you know. Then there are the friends who are like cigarettes. The friendship only works if you suck up to them, just like a cigarette. There are so many cigarettes that I know. They're not necessarily all friends. I would say they're acquaintances, but there are a lot of cigarette relationships, acquaintances and friendships that I have where it only works if you suck up to them. And I'm not a sucker upper. I am not a smoker, trust me, in the physical sense or in the friendship sense. I have, often been put in more difficult positions because I refused to suck up to a manager, whereas everyone else was sucking up to them. When I was a kid at school, there was a music teacher that I had who everyone sucked up to, and he would only be nice to those kids who sucked up to him, but I didn't. I wasn't rude, by the way. I was a very polite, quiet, studious kid, but he treated me differently because I didn't suck up to him. And there are many people like that, especially even on Instagram, even within the communities, who expect you to suck up to them. And it's all like, again, take. You suck up to them. So I guess they could also fall into the hyena category. But guess what? If that's the only way that, your friendship can thrive, then just like a cigarette, it can be cancerous to not only your friendship, but to your mental well-being in general. There are friends who I've called museums. People who just expect you to be in awe of them, everything they put out, and put them on a pedestal, quite similar to cigarettes. But people who are happy for you to support their work or their movement, and only if you do that then you're an ally. But otherwise they treat you like, go away until the next exhibition. So those people I've called museums, and again, there's so many of them on social media and in the community who just expect you to be in awe of everything they do, but there's no reciprocation. You just have to put them on a pedestal and just be like, oh, you're amazing, you're great, you're wonderful, Then there are the Houdinis. I'm sure you can guess what this means. Friends who are happy when you're around for them and support you. But the second that you need them, they vanish into thin air. They do an escape act. Last month, when I wasn't mentally well, it was the first time I publicly said to my friends and on Instagram, on social media, I'm not okay. It is so unusual for me to do that because generally, like I said, I'm always known as a friend who has it all together, always got it together, always the strong one, always the one who's like, can give advice or be there for somebody. But it's the first time I said I'm not okay. And there were just certain friends who I'm very, very close to, who I thought would be there for me more than they were. But it just went over their heads. And it's not that I think that they did it maliciously, like, oh, let's just deliberately ignore Debs and not be there for her. I think because they're so used to me just being there for them, naturally, habitually, when the tables got turned and I asked indirectly for help and saying, I'm not okay, now it's my turn to get help, it's my turn to receive some support, it's my turn for you, it's your turn to contact me and take me out for a meal, or do something nice for me and make sure I'm okay. Suddenly they weren't there. That's why I described this friendship as a Houdini's. Thing is, it's not even that I was expecting a grand gesture. These particular friends that I'm talking about didn't even reach out to me to say, hey, I saw your post, I'm really sorry to hear that you're not in a good headspace, I'm worried about you, or are you okay, or did you want to talk about it sometime? They didn't even do that. I don't expect equal give and take, like I said earlier, as that's not a true friendship in my mind. I do things for you, like listening to your problems, because I want to. Nobody forces me to. Nobody has my hands behind my back and a gun to my head. However, the time that I have an issue with it is when I need you the one time and you're not there. Because then how do I interpret that? Do I interpret that as I'm not good enough for you to support me? or I'm that type of friend that you only use for your purposes, and then the rest of it is just like whatever. So how do I interpret that? Then you have the friends, and I have the friends called croissants. I've named them croissants, like the pastry. Friends who are flaky AF. And I'm sure we have many of these friends in our friendship group. So how do you identify a croissant? They bail on you last minute. They normally give you a reason you know is highly likely to be a lie, like their mum died 3 times, or, you know, their right leg fell off 5 times and they have to go operate on it. Something happened last minute. And by the way, I know these things happen in real life, but with these particular friends, you've been friends with them for so long, you can just see through their BS and you know when they're not being quite honest with you. Turn up late. Now, I have a couple of friends who turn up late. Generally, my friends are very good with timekeeping. I have a thing, I'm so anal about timekeeping. I not only like expecting people to be on time, but I hate being late for anything. Like, not just work, not just important things, even for friends. Like, I panic. And if I can, I'll message my friend like 1,000 times to give them updates along the way on my journey, to let them know I'm sorry and why I'm late and where I am, and give them an updated estimated time of arrival. I've had friendships where I've been really close with them and they've been like, oh, it's not a big deal to be late. Oh, it is what it is. You know, that sort of attitude. Oh, these things happen. But interestingly, I recently read an article about people who are late. And this person's perspective, I wish I had that article, because otherwise I'd have linked it down below. If I can find it, I'll link it down below. But I genuinely cannot remember where I read it. But it was a really interesting article about how people shouldn't minimize lateness. And the reason why is because they said, who do you think you are? And why do you think you're so special for others to wait on you? Why is your time more important than the person waiting for you? At the end of the day, you've both made time to meet up, be somewhere at a certain time. The other person has left their house at a certain time to be there on time, if not early. But you've done the exact opposite. That says, I respect your time, but you don't respect mine. And the way they worded it was probably 10 times more effective than how I've just explained it. But honestly, it was so profound. And I was like, that is such a good point. Because they were saying, like, if you turn up late, it means you don't respect me. If you turn up late for an interview, you don't respect the interviewer. But if you're saying, well, I do turn up on time for interviews, but I'm just not turning up on time for you, that's saying, well, I don't place as much importance on you, someone who's my friend, and I should love and actually respect more than my employer. You know what I mean? So that was a really interesting point of view that I hadn't thought about like that until I read that article. So like I said, going back to the croissant and the friend that's flaky, they turn up late. They say they'll do things but rarely follow through. They go MIA on you and don't respond for ages. Again, don't get me wrong. I know many of us are career people and have lives to live. Some of us have families, or at least other halves, general lives to live. And I'm not talking about that. Like, I'm not talking about that, gosh, where has this week gone? I need to get back to this friend. I must get back to that person. I'm sure we've all been there. We've all been guilty of it. And normally when a friend is like that with me, I completely get it, because I've often done that where I've forgotten to respond straight away, because when my friend happened to message, I might have been about to jump into a Zoom call, and then before you know it, the day is gone. And then, do you know what I mean? So I'm not talking about that type of going MIA. I'm talking about the, should I report them to the MI6 FBI type MIA, when they ghost you. And you're like, hello, are you still alive? Type ghosting and type of MIAing, should I say. Then one of the last categories that I came up with, I'm sure there's way more, is what I call, it's kind of got a dual title, clout chasers, which is a very, I think, American term that was coined a few years ago on social media. Clout chasers, clout with a T, chasers, or influencer wannabes. People who use you to promote them. Being a small-time content creator, I know a whole host of other content creators. And actually, within this community, I feel like maybe I'm lucky. Generally speaking, everyone is so lovely, like so lovely. It's so hard with Instagram's algorithm to keep up to date with everyone's content. It's near impossible. I think I heard a statistic that on your feed of Instagram, you only get like 10% of the people that you follow, you only get 10% of their content on your Instagram feed, and it's Instagram that will really, through algorithm, decide whose content they show you or not. So it's very easy to kind of like forget about a certain person's content until either they comment on your profile or they just happen to pop up in your stories and you see it, for example. And also many content creators are way better at content creating than I am, in the sense like they're very consistent with their content. They'll post like at least once daily, if not more, whereas I'm not. So for me, there's a lot more to catch up on. So my point is, those people who support me and will message me or like comment on a post of mine, I go in and I straight away just like all their latest posts in one go, because I think it's nice to do that. And I know they don't reach out to me for that purpose, but that's what I try to do for them. But where I'm talking about clout chasers and influencer wannabes, so like I said, it's people who want to use you. They're always shamelessly reaching out for a favor, to share something for them, plug something for them, share their story, share their event, comment on their post or video, but rarely, if ever, do the same thing for you. And it always boggles my mind, the audacity, because it's like, fair enough, you've done that for me in the past, or it's sort of more of a give and take relationship. But there are so many people on social media, not in terms of my close circle, I'm not talking about that, but people who, like, again, are kind of acquaintances, and I've met some of them, I haven't met some of them, I've had a conversation with some of them, I've met some of them at events. It's the audaciousness of just like asking you to do stuff for them and expecting it, but they don't necessarily do the same for you. So that just always boggles my mind. Can you watch my video, like it and comment on it, even though I've never watched your videos before or ever commented on yours before? You know, it's that sort of thing where it's just a bit of an eye roll moment. And I think it's more so from a perspective where I would never ask you for a favor personally that I'm not willing to return. I then have friends who are also content creators, or people that I know who are also content creators, who watch everything that I do. And I know this because some of them have mentioned that they've watched my videos, but then they won't comment on it. And I'm like, if you've already made the effort to watch my video, which often are very long, thank you very much. But if you've made the effort to watch my video, why not just like it and give me a comment? But like I said, they'll watch the video, they'll never comment. But then I've had quite a few people take my ideas. And it's so difficult because when you're a small content creator, it'll be different, I think, if I was a big content creator and people were taking my ideas, then I think it'd be more visible. But because I'm a small content creator, it's not that visible to people. Ideas are all you have in a very competitive and overcrowded market, especially like beauty, which is what I've highly focused on. I think it's manners to support one another equally on something like social media and content creation. I think if you've made the time to watch a video, comment on it and give credit where credit is due. For example, if another content creator made me buy something because I saw them promote it and I liked it, I will then say I bought it because of that person. So if you've seen a video and you liked the way they did that video or the reel or the transition, again, credit them. Like, I saw a friend's video once and I told her that I really liked it because I liked the way she did this eyeliner with this Taylor Swift song. And I told her I really liked it and, you know, I wanted to replicate the video and if it was okay. And she was like, of course. So when I eventually got around to filming and uploading that video, I then credited her. And by the way, she's the kind of friend that wouldn't have cared, I don't think, if I'd done that. But I mean, it is a bit like shady if you know where the idea is from and then you don't say anything. Am I crazy for thinking like this? Am I crazy? Am I upholding too high standards? Should I just go live in La La Land and have some unicorns as pets? Please let me know. So in summary, in relation to toxic friends, I wrote, there are toxic friends or people who pretend to be friends. So why do you think the word fiend exists in friend? Though the majority of my friends are great, some of the above people exist, which is, let me remind you, because I'm proud of these nicknames, the hyenas, the cigarettes, the museums, the Houdinis, the croissants, and the cloud chasers / influencer wannabes. Like I said, some of the above people exist and above friendships exist. I try to be a very forgiving person, and I know I am, that I have no doubt over. And I'm very, very, very weak to sincere apologies. And it's always good to see changes in actions rather than words, because like I said, after all, words are cheap. Anyone can say they're sorry. Anyone can say, I'll do better. And if they don't, that talk is cheap. I'm someone who gives people several chances. But when I walk away and if I'm done, I'm done. And that's why I titled this episode, Enough is Enough. Where do you draw the line? Where do I draw the line? What are your thoughts on this? Would there be any categories that you would add to? I would be really, really interested to know. And bonus points for any new names coined. I just want to end on saying I am grateful for the majority of my friendships and the relationships. In fact, even though I've got a lot of friends who I've been friends with easily for like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years plus, I am so even grateful for friends on social media. Because when I did that post a month ago and said I'm not okay, I genuinely thought that I would have one or two people reach out and just say, you know, like, are you okay? Didn't expect the comments that I got and the private messages, more importantly, that I got. And the amount of people that reached out to me, which in a way was so lovely, but also made me feel sad because I was like, some of these people haven't even met me in person, and they're being way more supportive than some of the friends that I've been there for constantly as a constant support. And there are some people a couple of people in fact, who I've met via Instagram. I hope you know who you are. Several people that I've met on Instagram who I haven't had the fortune of meeting yet, and only purely because of distance. Like, some of you live in the States, some of you live in the north of England. You know, there's a lot of you out there. And it's just one of those things where, like, I just know with those people that if we had lived closer and distance wasn't an issue, we would meet up for like brunch, and we would meet up for like lunch, dinner, and spend time fostering a friendship. I think it is harder to foster a friendship when you don't have that kind of closeness in proximity. Some of these people honestly have been so sincere and have reached out to me and offered even like for me to call them if I want someone to talk to, or if I need someone to talk to. I had loads of people reaching out who offered to meet with me straight away because I said I wasn't okay, and I think it just shocked them because they were like, what? Debs isn't okay? Press the red button. This is a real emergency. So yeah, what I'm trying to say and end on is a more positive note to say thank you very much to those of you, you know who you are, who reached out to me, who offered me an ear, who offered for me to talk to you when I needed it. And yeah, like truly, truly, truly grateful. And as an update on that, I am so much better now. I am so much better than I was before. And I think you can only take a day at a time, right? But I am so much better, and more better because knowing that people like you exist and friends like you guys exist. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was probably on the longer side. Depends how much I edit out. And like I said, it probably won't be a part 2, or at least not a part 2 straight away. But I would love to know your thoughts down below about all the things that I spoke on. You know, what does friendship mean to you? Where do you draw the line? What are your boundaries or standards that you accept for yourself in a friendship? I would love to know. Thank you so much for listening or watching, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care of yourselves.